joined by Tom DeVitto, who's Marketing Director for BlumShapiro. We collaborated yet again, it's been going on for over a decade, on our 2012 Survey of Connecticut Businesses. And so we're going to go through some of the findings of that. This was something that we did during the summer. And we do it, as I mentioned, every year, just to get a feel of what's going on with business in the state. Where are they going? What are the challenges? What do they see as key factors? And we're going to go through briefly 4 of the results here, and then touch on a few of the other ones, but we'll be glad to handle any questions you folks might have on the survey. And with that, I think I'd like Tom to start in.
Sure.
Talk about what we got here.
Thanks, Pete. I think, all in all, it's fairly good news. Profitability this year in 2011 was up. There was an increase of about 3% year over year. We see those that reporting losses continuing in downward, as well as those that are claiming break even are looking a whole lot better this year as well. When we asked how they projected 2012 to end up, as you can see, that those trend lines continue. So, from a profitability standpoint, we feel pretty good. I can tell you that there's a lot of things driving it. With our client base, for instance, we have seen a somewhat modest demand, increase, but a lot of it is from just the cost containment measures that they put in place over the last 2 years, coupled with a lot of efficiencies that they've adopted, technology especially, and that's driven efficiencies and increased productivity. So there's a lot of things going into that profitability number. We also asked this year about Connecticut's greatest assets, and once again we scored extremely high in the areas of quality of life and also proximity to markets, as you would expect. One of the real surprises for us this year was the sharp decline in highly educated workforce. We typically score extremely high in that area, and the driver of that is very simply what we've been hearing for quite some time. People are having trouble getting qualified workers. 48% of the respondents said that they are real challenged with that. 58% on the manufacturing side, and primarily majority of that need, it seems to be in that mid-level professional slot. The other, so those are really the two. Hiring, I think fairly good news, Pete. 2012, 43%. Not a bad number. I have to tell you, it's a good number relative to what we were seeing coming out of CBIA's interim types of reports. But it is down year over year in regards to what employers had said that they anticipated doing this year. And we think a lot of that is driven by the slowdown that we saw a little bit on the economy, but also the impact of tax increases last year. And I'll be happy to show more.
So a year ago, more than 43% said they plan to hire.
That's right, 55% actually.
And then so far, 43% have hired.
Hired and anticipate hiring throughout the year. So year over year, a little bit of a drop.
Which still, again, not terrible numbers and better than what we're seeing in the quarterly, but it shows there's still strain out there.
And 61% of the folks that we talked to had said that the recent tax increases either have significantly or somewhat impacted their ability to hire. So it's definitely playing a role with employment. Top business concerns this year, again, a slight shift, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of anxiety over national economic uncertainties. We heard that this morning. Ryan points to a lot of those. Also, Connecticut's economy. And the overall optimism on Connecticut economy is not that bright.
Anxiety over what's going to happen?
That's correct. The push
conditions, right?
We have affordable care, we have,
Everything's imposing.
Yeah, I love the word fiscal nirvana. I didn't know those two go together. But it was interesting.
I was with Boston, I was with Bloomfield last time. You think that we're making money like crazy, everything's okay.
Well, I can only report what our businesses are telling us.
Okay.
Yeah, our businesses are not saying everything.
That optimism is important, isn't it?
Well, I think it is, and the sentiment, that we're seeing, I think, on the individual company side, is fairly optimistic. But that's tempered with, the uncertainties on the national side coupled with the overall sentiment of where Connecticut's economy is.
Yeah, I think if you ask companies, so how's your business doing? It varies by industry. A lot of manufacturers are saying pretty well. But when you ask them, how they think about the future, there's a lot of nervousness. And I think that really comes out there. And I don't think it's unique to Connecticut, though, because as Ryan Sweet was saying, he thinks that it's had effect nationwide.
The top business concerns, are these ones you supplied, or was this completely
Yes.
free-form?
Yes, those are options we see.
Right.
So
But
you
they're
didn't ask
based
about
upon.
lack of demand, or is that covered under lack of jobs?
Well, I think that, lack of demand, I think has to do with, the economic uncertainty. I think that's worked into that.
Okay. I mean, uncertainty I tend to think of as policy, not so much, I'm not selling as much as I used to.
I think that was probably interpreted as covering both by respondents.
Okay.
You don't have healthcare as a concern on that. Various other reports have cited the cost of healthcare as, a
Well,
problem.
there is cost of compliance with state and federal regulations that's there, but, again, this is tough. And I think the first thing that's hitting a lot of people right now is worry about the economy.
So, basically what these respondents are saying is they feel fairly good about their business. Things look like they're shaping up.
Right.
But the idea that there could be some kind of hit in the economy, whether it's on something with the...
And I think that has the impact on this, and that, what you're talking about there is profitability pretty good, at least, in terms of firms that are seeing net loss, okay? But they've got uncertainty, and so that may be impacting investment decisions that temper this more than it otherwise could be.
And it's driving optimism, overall optimism, or lack thereof, in the economy. We asked that question this year, just how what do you think the economy is going to improve over the next 5 years? The optimism there. And only 2% said they were very optimistic. About 16% said they were somewhat, but overwhelmingly 60% or close to 60% had said that they were either very or somewhat pessimistic.
Over 5 years that it would improve at all.
That's correct. So it gives you an idea of the sentiment.
Well, last night, the impression I got, and I hope I understood it correctly, that healthcare is really not the major cost to the small business. It's the economy. That if the economy improves, they can handle whatever the cost may be on healthcare.
Well, the Affordable Care is going to have a direct impact. A lot of our companies are S corporations, they're pass-through entities, and in fact, that's going to have, and they fall into that high net worth type category, so it's going to have an impact.
Right, and that's also the tax increases have an impact that's disproportionate on those firms versus C corps.
Has businesses' perception of state government changed at all with tax increases and also with the various incentive programs? Do you have any data on that?
It's interesting. I don't think we asked that question.
We didn't ask that specifically. In
We
other
didn't ask
surveys that we've done and anecdotally and talking with a lot of businesses, what I'm hearing, and I know this from talking to a lot of executives, is they have more hope because I think a lot of them think that Governor Malloy has hired some very good people, and they are hearing more from them. But they are still very concerned as to how changes in the state are being implemented, and there still is, a lot of concern, because of the state fiscal situation as to, is there another shoe going to drop? They're worried about that, and they're worried about the federal level, as Ryan went through quite a bit with, there's all these things Congress has got to act upon, or there's going to be cost increases that are going to whack either companies or their customers.
So you're hearing praises for people like Catherine Smith or Claire Leonardi or...
Yeah, and DNSD. Yeah.
Well, I think we moved
Very,
from,
I think we're hearing good things about most of those people.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The towns have tax problems. Isn't that a concern that would affect no matter what benefits Governor Malloy may come up with in Connecticut?
Well, you know, we didn't ask specifics on property taxes, but, you know, the taxes are, I mean, to businesses, taxes are taxes, whether they're property or whether they're state. And quite frankly, there's an enormous amount of interrelationship between, you know, property taxes and state taxes. You know, one of the things that the governor pointed out, and I think he pointed out accurately, was that, you know, when he dealt with the state budget problems, he did not pass the problems down to the municipalities. Other states did do that. And that doesn't mean that, you know, that wasn't a huge tax increase, because it was. And that's a problem, as these guys have said in this survey. But you know, he did not pass on that problem. And so, you know, the property tax issue is less than it might be in some of these other states that they really stuck it to the towns.
If you have this situation that you're describing where you have better profitability, maybe demand for products and services, at the same time combined with this sort of grand nudginess about where the economy is going, and you said maybe 5 years out, how do you run a business that way? I mean, how do you plan for 5 years, or how do you get past that level of nervousness which may or may not be real?
I think you wait for elections to resolve things, in part. I think, don't you hear that from a lot of companies?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely correct. That's the biggest difficulty, is people are really challenged with being able to look out 3 to 5 years and do any real planning. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainties out there. We've heard them on the national level, but how do you go about saying, hey, I'm going to hire, or I'm going to make investments in equipment, or I'm going to expand my manufacturing facility? How am I going to make decisions on that when I really can't see out 2 or 3 or 5 years?
Yeah, I think, you know, if we'd already had elections in the middle of the summer, we'd be a lot better off. I think if we'd already had elections in the middle of the summer, I think we'd be a lot better off looking at, you know, the end of this calendar year.
Yeah, but I mean, there's no guarantee that even the election is going to resolve this, in the sense that, well, let's say the Republicans did win. Let's say there was an attempt to do away with the president's health care plan. Just the shift of going from planning for this new health care law to now planning for repeal of the law is going to create, it's going to stir the pot, isn't it? And there's no guarantee that Congress is going to do anything more in the next 2 years than it did in the last 2 years. So, I mean,
These are all open questions.
Yeah, the polarization that we've seen, you know, from our legislatures has been somewhat of, you know, the debt crisis here in Connecticut with the amount of defense contractors we have. We have these mandatory cuts. The impact to us would be dramatic. So there's just so much out there for people to consider.
Who was the typical business that answered this? How many employees, how much revenue, what segments?
Really was across a number of industries, and you'll see that breakdown in the, yeah, but heavier concentration with manufacturers
And smaller.
and professional services is smaller. You know what was interesting this year, I don't know if you noticed, was the uptick in response on the minority-owned companies. It jumped from 4% to 8%, so much more involved in the survey this year.
So you think that the small manufacturers got a head start, a good head start,
Good head start on.
to come back?
Yeah, I mean, you know, all indications are, from what we're seeing, is that things are getting better. Now, you know, you look at the small dip in projection from 59 to 57, and those that project a net profit, it still suggests that we're not out of the woods.
Pete, have y'all been doing this longer than 2008?
Oh, yeah. We actually started this survey back in '92 with Arthur Anderson, and we've been doing over 10 years, we've been doing it with Bloom.
So the 14% loss, is that one of the lowest figures
No.
you've ever seen?
No, we've gone down to 6 and 7.
Okay.
Yeah, so we still got a ways to go. And the profitability has been over 70% in the past. So again, you know, we're improving, but we still have a ways to go from what we have seen in prior surveys.
And that was like late 90s, those kind of figures?
Some of them were, I believe, yeah, late 90s, to 2000, so before the 2001 recession.